see. There we go. Or I think.
I can't see it on my side yet, but mine's always a little bit slower than yours. Yeah, it just popped up on my phone.
Still got it.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Perfect. Are you guys going to do any farm work today or kind of hard?
I don't know. It just depends on when everyone leaves.
Yeah.
I would like to get a little bit more done today. I had like 2 boxes of dahlias come in yesterday, so I'd love to go plant them, but
And our other favorite
and
crop.
exactly. Oh, I know. I still didn't do it yet. But
You know what you should do? You should start with the freshest box first. Like, don't try to
I'm going
salvage the.
to do on my porch because they're gonna take so long to plant if I try to do the older ones
And not just
first.
that, what I've started to notice is that if you let them grow too long, you really have to bury them deep, or else what ends up happening is like it's almost like they don't root as well, so they start toppling
Mm,
over. Because that happened to me where I was like in a rush to plant some ones that had like sprouted like this long, and
yeah.
then it basically like most of them are fine, but like probably about 20% of them are like tipped over, and then when they tip over, then like the buds are like curving. So
Yeah. And it's like whatever, I won't care for this year, but I will, you know,
yeah,
maybe they would come back the next year.
yep, totally. Good morning. Hey, Madison. Hey, Amanda. We were just catching up on some farm tasks. How are you ladies doing this morning? And then also, can you guys hear us well? Is the biggest
We
question.
always like to be sure of
We
that
always
before we
want to
start
make
it.
sure that you can actually hear us. I'm hoping the answer is yes, but there's no chat response.
And I'm gonna check on mine.
Yes, I'm going to check on my phone too. We still have a minute left.
There we go. It's working.
Yay.
On mine.
Awesome. Let's give it another minute. I think there's 6 viewers on here so far. Yay, awesome. Happy for a forecast with no rain in it. We just came out of a bunch of rain. I was outside yesterday looking at my bells of Ireland and I'm like, there's so many holes in here. Huh, slugland. It's a slug fest. Because I wood chip
Yeah.
everything and I'm cognizant that that's the risk. But I was like, I've never seen so many slugs. So hopefully, Amanda, you're not dealing with that either.
Yeah. You know how we were talking about my mint having holes in it and maybe it's slugs, but I have them up in raised beds. Like, do you think
Oh,
the slugs would have?
oh yeah. Oh
I need
yeah.
to deal with that.
I think I
Yeah.
have like a vole or some sort of squirrel that's jumping like 3 feet into a very elevated raised bed. So they'll do anything to get there. And hi, Meme.
Yeah.
Good to see you here. It's 10 o'clock already, Eastern time. And thank you guys for the flexibility. As you guys know, my daughter's been sick, and I think my voice is like 95% back at this point. So, Jordan and I had a lot to talk about when we scheduled it, but I feel like now we have even more to talk about.
I
So,
know.
yeah, so we're going to talk about Woodies, perennials, and short lived perennials, but we're actually going to start first by recapping Mother's Day. And we would also love for you guys in the chat to talk about like how did your Mother's Day go? Jordan and I both sold, so you guys know because I did a market video. So I actually like Jordan to share a little bit more because Jordan, like I thought, hit it out of the park. Even though she had a very mistimed, it wasn't even a
Yeah.
vacation; it was like a competition for one of her kids in Florida. So she had to travel during Mother's Day weekend. But Jordan, talk about your Mother's Day sales.
Yeah, it was really a good Mother's Day. So, first, because everyone will ask if I don't say it, I am Jordan. I own Jordan's Flower Farm. I'm a year 2 flower farmer out of Oklahoma. We have a farm stand on our property, and we also sell wholesale to florists. So Mother's Day, it went so good. And like Jessie said, I had a very mistimed trip. So it was very tricky trying to coordinate all of it. And we could only do so much this year because I flew out Saturday morning. So I wasn't even here on Mother's Day actually. But we opened our farm stand on Friday and Saturday and we sold 81 bouquets. So that was very exciting. And then during the week, we wholesaled flowers I actually don't know how many we ended up doing stem count wise, but it was a pretty good Mother's Day. I would say we like did less in wholesale than we did last year, just because we moved a lot of it retail. We could have done more if I would have been in town, because by I think we had like a couple of things left on Sunday, but not a whole lot. So we tried a different approach for Mother's Day this year. So it's super tricky in Oklahoma to have focal flowers at Mother's Day because we get hot so quickly here. So we tried a different approach of, rather than doing mixed bouquets, we did straight bunches in the farm stand. So what it gave our customers the ability to do, because on a holiday like Mother's Day, they're gonna buy more anyway. So they were able to like come in and mix and match the straight bunches. So cart sizes were like closer to $100 or $80 or $60, way less than just like normally coming in and grabbing, our normal cart size at our farm stand is 40, so two bouquets, because we do a $20 bouquet at our farm stand. So it definitely helped the cart size go up. And I think our customers had fun with it, because then they were able to take them home and arrange them themselves and put them. And I just think that they really enjoyed it. And it was a good way for me to be able to do it quickly, since I was going out of town and I just needed some way to like get the flowers in there and move them quickly.
Yeah, and let's talk about two quick things here. One, where were you selling these bouquets? Because that's also new. And two, what went into these street bunches?
Yeah, so we were selling them. We have a farm stand on our property. We call it Buttercup, the flower shed. So it's a cute little buttercup yellow shed that we have, and so we were selling them out of our farm stand. And then we had larkspur, we had orlea, we had foxgloves, we had snapdragons,
Buplorum.
we had buplorum. Now, Jesse, I will tell you. I think we only had three. I was doing like the final numbers yesterday. So I know on Friday we sold one. It was like a trial that Jesse and I were like, will a straight bunch of Buplorum sell? Let's just see. And then it did. And I was like, okay, let's do some more then for Saturday.
Well, I
So I
mean,
think I
the
put 10 in.
yeah, and like the entire thing was a bit of an experiment,
Yes.
right? Which is that take if you just take a straight bunch and you had what, anywhere from 8 to 10 stems in most of these.
Yeah. So we did 8 stems of like snapdragons, 10 stems of larkspur. I did 10 stems of orlea. And so we were just doing basically two times our wholesale price. Like we were marking up in most cases two times. Not all of them. I want to get to that point, but we're just not quite there. Like larkspur is easy to do two times, orlea is easy. Um, Foxgloves, we'd only do 5 stems in a wrap for foxgloves, and then that is two times we're able to do that to get to the $20. So
But yeah, like
yeah,
overall it seemed to be successful for Mother's Day, and that pushed me to actually try that for the local country store that I sell at. And so I would say that my spring crops are starting to trickle in. I completely mistimed my lilies, but now my lilies are starting to come in. I have foxglove and I have like a few bouquets that are mixed, but I'm actually starting to put in just straight bunches, and I'm trying to see like, will people buy straight bunches of foxglove? So that should be
do you
interesting.
have any results from yesterday's
No,
sales yet?
because well, I don't. So I'm hoping that I'll collect a few weeks worth of results and I'll either be able to make a video on it or post about it. But I do think that Jordan's on to something here, which is like some of the stuff that she had, like Orlea, 10 stems of Orlea is insane, and it has such a higher perceived value, it feels, than the $20, and it's also so much more profitable from a labor perspective to do that. So I'm hoping that we might be able to find a few staple crops that can act as like the good straight bunches for us, as like the core
Now,
bouquets.
for like transparency, I think that worked so well on a holiday. I did the same thing. I didn't do the same thing yesterday. Yesterday, I did half mixed bouquets and half straight bunches, and we didn't sell any of our straight bunches yesterday. So the farm stand's still open today. So I'm hoping, and like there's straight bunches of snapdragons, and they look good. Like they're pretty, but they're not selling in
I
comparison.
also
But
think
also,
like,
our mixed bouquets looked really good this week.
and
So
that's what I was gonna say. So I actually have a photo of your mixed bouquet. I'm gonna put that on the screen right now. I think that we need to have a separate conversation around this, like psychology with having a mix versus a straight bunch, especially at the same price. So maybe we save that for another video. But I think that this is a good dive now into our
Yeah.
perennial discussion because here were Jordan's bouquets from this week. They look awesome. Jordan,
They're
like
so
you basically said on your Instagram that Perennial saved your butt. Can you talk to us about what is in these bouquets?
Yeah, so in the bouquets this week, we did Baptisia, we did Yarrow, we did foxgloves, snapdragons, and larkspur. So it was like 50-50 between perennials and annuals.
And I think the more impressive part was you just put in your baptisia. Like it wasn't even like you put it in for like
Right.
2 months, right? It was maybe a month and a half at
I
most.
6 weeks, I
Six.
think max. Like me and Charlie, my daughter, have just both been like, how are we already harvesting this? This is so confusing. But we got these roots from Walter's garden, and I'm not kidding you guys. I can't lean back far enough to show you how long these Baptisia roots were. They're the most eager plants to grow that I have ever planted. Like within like a week, they were so tall. And I feel like most people would tell you not to harvest like from a first year perennial, like, oh, these are putting up like 10 stems. I'm like, okay, well, I can cut like 2 to 3 and it's still gonna be fine. Um, so yeah, we've been harvesting on them because like we planted 120 and I've harvested 30 stems so far. Or
Wow.
actually a little more than 30 because I have some more in the kitchen that I harvested. So we probably harvested 45 stems from it so far.
I feel like that's a lot for 6 weeks. And I guess like if we go back to what you said earlier, which is that for you, it's obviously really hard right now to have focals. And I would even say that for us in New Jersey, there are people of focals, but there are people who are growing in structures, right? So for many of us who are kind of just doing this on the side without a structure, like it's almost impossible to achieve focals. And so, Jordan, I'm wondering, can you talk about like how you thought about which perennials to buy for this time of year as it relates to like helping you with make bouquets?
Yeah, so I think when I was deciding on perennials, I really want things that I don't have to baby. Like that's really important for me. Like I want things that I'm not having. I think Jesse and I both work full-time jobs outside of the farm. So I can't be going and having to like cover and uncover things all the time or opening and closing the high tunnel. Like I need things that I can plant and just like walk away from and come back and harvest them in the spring. And so, like, we have like yarrow and rudbeckia, things that are super cold hardy are really important because then I don't have to deal with protecting them. And I also want things that are going to take up space in the bouquet, right? Like, one stem of yarrow is like huge right now. Like, we have fall planted yarrow, and first year, it's so big. Like, one stem is just taking up so much space. So, I think those are like the two things that are really important to me is like cold hardiness, things that I don't have to like baby and protect. And then like what is it gonna give in the bouquet, right? So another thing too. I just think like the reason that I'm really looking at investing into perennials is like, we're not going to be young forever and we're not going to be able to plant annuals every single year. Like it's really hard to keep up with, especially when you work full time off farm, like to be able to keep up with planting the annuals every single year. And so I really want things that are going to give me that like, fillers, anything that I can get that I'm not having to plant every year is worth our investment in just from the labor that it saves us and honestly just like the wear and tear on our bodies. So
Yeah,
that's really important.
and I feel like that this is common sense with perennials. They're a lot less fussy. They usually need less water. They usually are more drought tolerant, right? They check all these boxes, but I just feel like in the flower farming world when we look to others, especially in the free resource world, it's always annuals and they just feel like a sexier crop to grow. I don't know why that is, right? But then you
Yeah.
have a few years under your belt and you're like, this sucks with all of the stuff that I have to do. I just want to
Yes.
simplify. And I feel like that's when we start going to perennials, even though all of the veterans are like, start investing in perennials in year one. And I feel like now I'm in year three. I'm finally down that route. So I
Like
yeah, go ahead.
I may have like done it differently, right? Because I did invest in perennials
Hmm.
like pretty early on. But I think the difference for me was I spent like 2 years having this like huge garden at my home. And so I had all these shrubs and perennials. So my first year flower farming, those saved my butt having those. Like the weeks that I was having to go to market and there was nothing annual wise blooming at the farm, like the yarrow I had in my garden, the wigelia plants, the hydrangeas, like I was able to cut off of those. And so I was able to see, and I had a lot of stuff, like we had a small space, but I had a lot of stuff packed into that garden, so it's not just like, I grew one plant. It's like I had like 20 hydrangeas at our house. And so like I felt like I had like a good trial to be like, okay, this is going to succeed in Oklahoma. Like we can plant this at a farm scale because it does really well.
I just remember seeing your first year. Okay, so let's take a step back. Jordan and I met because Jordan reached out to me after seeing one of my YouTube videos. And I remember Jordan telling me her plans and me being like, "You're a crazy woman. Like, you've got
Crazy.
so much." She's planting stuff into the ground, and then all of a sudden, like her first market starts, and I'm like, "How do you have all these flowers already?" And then I realized they were all perennials. So, like, I just feel like that took me a long time to realize. And I just had a video yesterday about this, like, aha with perennials, which sounds so dumb, but I just think that there's this undervalued piece around all of the labor that we save and the fact that annuals or perennials tend to get better over time as they mature, right? So they're going to put out more for you. And Amanda here is agreeing. Amanda, I'd actually love to know which perennials you're switching over to. And can you write in the chat where you're located for other people, just in case if they're also wondering what works well there. But Jordan, I want to go back to what you said about just like, what works for you in Oklahoma. And so,
Mhm.
first, can you describe what the Oklahoma growing environment is like? And then can we actually go into a bit of more like the woodies? Like, what have you been putting in?
Yeah. Yeah. So Oklahoma growing climate, it's super rainy in the spring and it's super hot in the summer. And then in the last few years, we've had like zero rain in the summer. Like it's just like we're just like drought. So that's kind of the weather here. I mean, in the summertime, it's getting like over 100 for weeks on end. It's very hot. It's pretty miserable here in the summer, but it's fine. Like, it's not the world's worst. Like, we grew 2,000 dahlias with no issue last year, throughout the summer, so it's
It
fine.
can happen. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm like, we all have our own challenges about where we grow. So woodies that we added to the farm. So since last time we talked, we in the fall we put in our orders for all, or I guess probably in the winter we put in our orders for all of our woody shrubs for the year. I had been planning to do it, so very excited. So the first thing, like perennial wise, that we invested in on the farm was obviously peonies, because that's like your number one. You got to have it. Invest early. It's gonna be the thing that like saves your butt focal wise. That's a perennial.
Well,
That's
it saves
important.
your butt because it's at a time of year where there are few other focals, right? I think that's the
Yeah,
point to make. Like, not only do they fetch a high price, but they happen to bloom at a time when there's few other options, unless of you're forcing something like me, like lilies.
agreed.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Especially here in Oklahoma, where it's like we literally just don't have any other focal flowers at that time of year because your ranunculus is done, your tulips are done, your daffodil, like all of your focals are done. So our woody field. So what we put in, we did 3 rows of hydrangeas and we did the panicle hydrangeas. So like your limelights, um, and those varieties. We did proven winners. So I do anticipate that at some point, just because we have such intense sun and heat here in Oklahoma, that we'll likely put some sort of shade structure over just those 3 rows. But I've grown them in full sun here in Oklahoma. They've done fine. I've seen lots of other gardeners here in Oklahoma that have them. I have my own personal experience with them. I feel like they're going to be fine, but I do know in the back of my head that we could have an investment there that we might need. But I'll tell you that those, we had like probably 20 of them in our garden at our old house, and we sold like every stem to florists last year.
How
And they fetch a high
Yeah,
price.
they do fetch a high price. So I actually have a couple of questions on hydrangeas here, and I know a couple of viewers did too before the live. So the first question is, like, how long do you have to wait before you're cutting off of these hydrangea that you just put in?
So, so I did want to say this just for anyone that might be interested in this. Dave Dowling offers a class on woodies and perennials. I took the class. It is super helpful. It's like having like a dictionary in your pocket. Like it's so helpful. So I took that class. And it's really helpful. So he says with the first year you could be cutting off of them by fall. I think that's what
Wow.
he says.
Okay.
I don't know if that'll be the case here. I mean, I bought like the small quart size, like not any larger than that. So I anticipate like I think anytime I'm planning like woodies or perennials, I always tell myself 3 years, but I think by year two, we would likely be cutting off of them in some capacity. It might not be a lot, but when you're buying a quart size that's, $4, is it a quart? Yeah, an eight quart. I think it's a little 4-inch pots.
Hmm.
They cost wholesale like $4. One hydrangea stem, when you're selling it to a florist, is around $4.
Yes.
So, you quickly make your money once you've waited that time period, and as long as you're taking care of them, you'll quickly make your money back on hydrangeas. They're a very good one to invest in.
And so when you're cutting from them, how long is this bloom window? Because I feel like that knowing when to cut is always this like tricky topic with hydrangeas. And I like you mentioned that you plant a very specific type of hydrangeas. I just know that high level there's like three or four types, right? Am I correct? Four?
Yeah, there's like the macrophilia,
You even know the names.
botanical.
Or you kind of know the
There's
names.
whatever the Annabelle is, and then there's like oak leaf, which
Yes.
I've heard oak leaf do well in Oklahoma as well, but we don't have any of those.
But the point is that the harvesting stage and how you condition them is actually different for all four. So it's really important if you're planting hydrangeas and you want to cut from them to know what you have and do the research on how to condition them because like in the Facebook groups you often get like how do I condition this? And it's like, well, it depends on what kind of hydrangea it is, right? So Jordan, for
Right.
you, like what is your bloom time window in which you can cut and when are you cutting them like at what stage?
Yeah, so we cut them last year in June, but the cool thing about panicle hydrangeas is that there's various cut stages for them. So you can let them dry on, or let them like get to like the dried stage on the plant and harvest them. I would not recommend that for Oklahoma. So I will always cut them before they get to that stage because in Oklahoma what happens is we are so hot that they'll burn and so they'll never look pretty. So we cut them in like when they're like when their leaf petals are out. We're not waiting for them to like dry on the plant. But in other climates, that can be a benefit of it is you can sell it like dried as well. So you can wait until it turns like the limelights turn that really pretty color in the fall. We don't have that here in Oklahoma. It's not going to turn. So
Got it.
we just know that our it'll probably be, like a 2-week harvest window that we have on them in
Got it.
June
Okay. And
before it gets like blazing hot here and burns them.
but I mean, June is still a good time because you're right before the summer. There's still a lot of events for weddings,
Wedding.
and they obviously really fill up a bouquet. I actually have a little lime in my landscaping, and I'm
Love little
testing to
lime.
see how that does with the deer. Like, this is my main issue. I went out this morning and I had Echinacea veronica ripped out from the deer. So, like, luckily they didn't eat it, but they ripped them out, right? So, I'm like trying to test what perennials are truly deer proof. Of course, they didn't touch the alliums, but one can only have so many alliums growing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I saw Amanda, like you're in a similar zone as me. Actually, my parents used to live near Lancaster. They lived in York, but she put in Baptisia, Hydrangea, Yarrow, Veronica, Rudbeckia, Roses, Nine Bark Sedum. I feel really proud because I have all of them. Some of them not in huge quantities. Oh yes, the deer also ate the sedum, which I also thought was deer resistant.
Oh,
She says
dear.
mountain mint, thornless raspberry, blueberries. Those are
I
two
want
that are winners, especially with florists, all for
Can we ask
foliage.
her a follow-up question on her
Yeah.
thornless raspberry? Is she growing? My concern is like I need a raised bed for that, right? Like if I go grow raspberry outside of a raised bed, it's just gonna spread like crazy, right?
Ooh, that's a good question,
That's my
Amanda. Yeah,
question.
Amanda,
Because
you,
I really
yeah.
would like to grow it, but I want to know that a little better before we decide to add it.
I am
I
nearly
think
sure
it
that I
needs
have
paint.
someone at my co-op who grows thornless raspberries, and I mean, they have like enough land where I guess like it doesn't
We do.
matter if it spreads, but I don't know, like as Erin Benzenkane would say, like she never
It's
regretted
never
that she planted
bad.
that she planted mint, right? Because it spread for her and she
Yeah.
needed it. So yeah, they're in a trough. Ah, okay.
Okay, yeah, I was pretty sure you have to contain them, so I just had to figure out where we want to put in like
Hmm.
that section of things. But I also want to add raspberry. I think it would be a really good filler.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay,
Okay,
so
other
that was so you said you had two rows of hydrangeas, was it?
three rows.
Three
Three
rows.
rows of
How
hydrangeas.
many is that? How many go in a row? Or how long is a row?
100. Our rows are 120 feet long at the farm. And then in the hydrangeas are we have two like rows within a row, like
Hmm.
two, and so it's 120 plants per row.
Wow,
So
okay.
we have
And that's just
360.
one plant. So actually, before we get into the other plants, of the growing space you have on your farm right now, so you have like a high tunnel, you obviously have like an annual field. If you exclude like the greenhouse area where you do workshops and that section, like
Mhm.
how much of your planted area is perennials right now?
Where are we counting the dahlias as perennials?
No, they're not
I'm not.
perennials.
They,
Are
they are for us. They came
oh,
back
because
in my
because you
old
don't have
barn.
to dig them out.
We don't have to dig
Then
them.
they are
Some
perennial,
people dig
yeah.
them, but a lot of people don't dig them
Yeah.
here.
But the thing is,
So,
dahlias are such a huge crop for you that let's take them
I
out
know.
because like that will
Okay,
skew the
take them out.
equation. Yeah.
Okay, then we just have. Hold on, I'm trying to remember how long our fields are. They're 90 feet, but I don't want anyone to be like shocked when I say our fields are 90 feet long. We're building up the farm to have 5 foot pathways so our tractors can go within them. So when I say our fields are 90 feet long, that's why our fields are so big. It's not like that's all planted. So 120 feet, and then we have 10 rows in the woody field. And then we have
You have 900 feet of woodies, which is insane to me.
the Baptisia row. It's 120 feet. And then we have a Yarrow and Rudbeckia row. Like I have 60 feet and 60 feet. So
Yeah.
one row. And then I'm switching one row over right now to Echinacea and Phlox. I hope
Okay.
that's not right. Echinacea, yeah, I don't know if that's right. I have phlox to plant right now, but I don't think it's going in that row. I can't remember what's going in that row. But
I
I have, okay, so what we're doing is we have our spring field right now. And as the spring crops are finishing, I'm replacing them with either summer annuals, seeded summer annuals in like half the field. And then the other half of the field, I'm replacing it with perennials.
got it. And
And
correct
then
me
we're
if
going to do a different spring field next year. Like we're going to move the spring field.
got it.
Oh, we also
Okay.
have a row of daffodils too. So I know I didn't answer your question because I don't know the math. It's like 15 rows
Which is
at 120 feet by 4 feet.
okay, got it. But I feel like that when I talk to you, whenever you get plugs, I feel like nowadays they're more like perennial plugs. And
Yeah.
for anything that's annual, the majority of it you're actually direct sowing. You're not even putting in plugs, which I
No.
think is super super smart
Except
because
for
yeah,
for all
except for
my summer annuals, I direct sow. I don't we do zero seed starting for our summer annuals. None.
or plug
Except for
buying
we order
for the summer
Lisianthus
annuals.
plugs. Separate Lisianthus plugs.
Yes. Yes.
But then we do plug orders for the fall stuff. I'm
What?
not direct
Yep.
sewing those for like Campanula and trying to think Sweet William, things like that. We're ordering plugs. But yeah, all of our summer annuals we're just doing seeds in the ground. But if I'm getting plugs in now, it's perennials.
Got it. Okay. I love that. Okay. So now
For
let's
those of you, I
yeah,
know
yeah,
that was
yeah,
like
go
a
ahead.
tangent, but I'm just gonna plug this because no kickbacks to me, but just so y'all know how I'm doing it. So Greenleaf, who is through Ball's the broker, Greenleaf is the grower. Greenleaf, like every month, does like 50% off their perennials. Like at some point during the month, they run a special. So when they do that, I just am like, okay, what's the next thing on my list? Like, okay, let's get like I'll do like a tray of echinacea, and their shipping is always $22 per tray, just a little bit high, but whatever. I know what it is. So I'll get like one tray half off. So I'm spending like $60 for that 60-ish dollar, depending on what the plugs are. And then I'll get like a tray. So I got like a tray of phlox in, yesterday. I'm
When
just
you
kind of
buy
like
a tray,
flowing.
sorry, so when you buy a tray, what's the quantity that you're buying in?
Okay, so it just depends. So, like, I know we were talking about this the other day on echinacea. Like, you and I both were ordering in 32s, like a little bit bigger. But then this last one, I switched to a 128. So I think
Okay.
it just varies. Like, usually it's either a 128, a 72, or a 32.
Okay.
32? Is that the size?
Yeah, and for me right now, because like I have 3 acres, but what good is 3 acres if the deer are going to eat everything outside of the fenced in area? Like even 32 for me is a bit much.
Mhm.
So like another good alternative I think a lot of people know is just go to clearance at like Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever hardware store you
Yes.
have that has a nursery, right? Like those are always good places. Like that's where I got some of my hydrangeas from. But I think that
Yes.
for like I've started realizing that if I'm experimenting with deer, it was a really good call to go with that 32 cell tray because those are coming in basically like what like they're pots. I two
Yeah, it's a good size.
it's a really good sized pot. And the point that I'm trying to make is that when the deer pulled it out, that entire plant really didn't suffer. I mean, I caught it early enough. So I
Mhm.
let it bake out in the sun for 2 days. That's a different story. But I had ordered silver shield plugs, so 128 cell tray, and those got completely taken out and they're done. Like I lost probably about 85% of that tray. So it's one of those things now where I'm like, okay, like I don't have a ton of space and I'm willing to pay up a little bit more for that bigger size because it also is actually a bit more protection against things that want to pull stuff out that hasn't had time to establish. So
Yeah,
that's my learning.
that's a good point. My deer aren't my deer, they're not messing with anything right now. I
Mm,
don't know what the deal is, but like I see them still, but they're just not, they haven't, even things that they should be eating, they're not. So I'm like,
that's good.
okay, well, I know. I need to protect our sunflowers because I'm a little nervous about those. Okay, so we talked about hydrangeas.
Yes. What other
Um,
woodies do you have? Because you had that shipment, which again, I wish I had the photo today, but it's in that like it's actually in the live thumbnail.
the
That's
thumbnail.
Jordan's
Yeah.
like is it a
Yes.
palette? Is it a like how did it even come?
I don't know. So then the other thing, flowering shrub that we did were lilacs. So lilacs bloom here in a time when there's like no focal flowers. They'll bloom for a very short window, maybe like a 1 to 2 week window. But my thought is just like if I can have those for just that 1 to 2 week window where I'm able to just like pack our farm stand full of lilacs for the week and that be like a really special thing that we do once a year, it's worth it. So we did 2 rows of lilacs. It's a little hot here for them, so I don't know how it's going to work, but and this is a good thing, a good idea for people to do. There are so many gardeners. So what I do when I'm like not sure is I get on our Oklahoma gardening groups. We have this one group that has like, I don't know, it's like 140,000 or 270,000 people in it. It's huge. So I'll just get on there and like search lilac. Like, okay, people have lilacs here in Oklahoma. Like, we can probably make this work. But if we can't, so we're trialing 2 different options. So we're trialing the proven winners like Bloomerang and what's their other one? Centura, I think. There's like, they have 2 different ones. So we're trialing those, but those aren't like your classic cut flower variety lilac. Like they're just not as like impactful. But I know they're gonna do good in Oklahoma. They go up to zone 8 and we're at zone 7. So like those will work. So we have those. And then the French lilacs, which is what you would consider like your actual like cut flower variety lilacs, we ordered those too, but we just did like 1 row of them and not even, we don't even have a complete full row of them. I think I ordered like 30 to trial or something like that, just to see if they'll do good here. I don't know. They might. I mean, there's people growing them. There's people telling me, like, I made a post and asked. So there's people telling me, like, they're going to do fine, but I'm just like, will they? So we'll
If
see.
there's anyone in the live who's growing lilacs in a hot area, please let us know
Yeah, let
because
me
Jordan
know.
would be very, very interested. And like this is what I appreciate about Jordan is that Jordan diligently does her homework whenever she's buying stuff, especially at scale. And here I am just going to my parents being like, you have a lilac tree. Let me dig up the seedlings, like here we go. Like I have no idea what lilac it is. But, obviously like difference in scale will equate to different levels of research. But Jordan, like you can tell, is very, very like knowledgeable in this
Yeah,
kind of
and
stuff.
to Jesse's point, I think a great thing that you can do is Lowe's clearance, man. You can find some great things. Like we were spending, it was costing wholesale like $8 to buy a 4-inch pot for a lilac. So it's like very expensive. And I went to Lowe's this week and got like 2 like big French lilacs for $12 on clearance. And like that saves you years. And it was, a third more than what I was spending wholesale. So but basically any of these shrubs that I talk about today, like you can go to Lowe's and find them, wait until a time when it's been hot and then go, and they're likely going to be on clearance and you'll be able to snatch them up and plant a couple of them and see how they do for you. That's a great way to trial it. And you can usually trial a shrub for like $12.
Yeah, no,
So
I
that's
love
the thing
that.
for
And
my
then
comfort.
in the chat, we have the deer was trying to eat your plants, but they use a tearing motion, which if the plant isn't rooted in, it pulls the plant out. They eat everything except for peonies and lilacs. Good to know they don't eat your peonies. I have 10 peonies that were actually gifted to me by Linda from Little Farmhouse Flowers. And
Oh.
they've been untouched right now, knock on wood. So if that works, I will actually then invest in peonies. But yeah, like it's so frustrating because I feel like I actually have to spray the stuff that I put in that's not rooted yet,
Mhm.
until they're rooted in. So but someone wrote, oh, did grow cook. There are low chill lilacs, angel white, blue skies, and lavender lady. I don't know if you've heard of those, Jordan. Lilacs are like foreign language to me, so I have no
I just like look
idea.
for a pen to write it down. That like I can go back and rewatch this and get it. I'm like, must know, must know. Okay, I'll have to look for those. That's the
Yeah.
other tricky part is like trying to find them is
It
hard.
that's
Plus, it's
true,
like the
yes.
end of the like planting season, so.
Yep. Yep. And then Amanda said she got her lilacs for $5 at the end of the season because they
Ooh,
were covered in powdery mildew. Yes, I
good
feel
work,
like
good work.
people who are like good at nursing sick plants back really benefit from clearance.
I do. It's not even that hard. It's like if you have drip lines, like
Yeah,
plant
exactly.
them, turn your water on. They're gonna do fine, especially like a big established shrub.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna do fine. Okay, other things that we planted. We did one row of Wygelia, which is just like we'll use that as a filler. I don't want to have to plant annual fillers every single year. Um, so I grew a couple, probably like five shrubs of Wygelia at our old house, and I did like the summer wine, which is like the big burgundy one. And then I grew a variegated one, so we got that one as well. And then I got just like one of the standard. I'm not going to be able to think of the name of it right now, but it blooms red, which seems weird. Like I
Hmm.
wouldn't have purchased a red one. I would have thought I would have purchased a pink one, but it doesn't matter because you're not growing it for the blooms. You'll wait till the blooms like drop off, or you'll cut it before it even blooms because you're just growing it for the greenery because the blooms fall off like super
Yeah,
fast.
and
So you would
and
never interface with blooms.
I do want to like stop here and reemphasize something that you said because I feel like that it took me a while to figure this out. And again, this was in the video that I talked about yesterday, which was I feel like that there is a lot that we can save in terms of labor, heartache, and planning when you focus on perennials for fillers. So, up until now, we've been talking about plugging this focal gap, especially around the Mother's Day timeframe, using perennials. But I think that outside of that window, there's so much opportunity for perennials to fill that filler gap. And I just remember, like, maybe it was the channels that I followed at the time when I first started learning about flowers, but it was like plant basil, right? Like plant all of
Right.
these type of annual fillers that like awesome, but obviously take a lot of effort. So I love that you're talking about how you want to plug your greenery in with perennials, and that's like what I've been putting in the ground too for kind of like
Yeah.
that summer to fall phase.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like that's the phase I'm like most worried about because I don't particularly like love basil as a filler. Like it's
It also
okay.
wilts. And
It will.
and actually the thing is I feel like basil is a really long like time to maturity crop as a cut
Mhm.
flower because you really have to wait for it to flower. So maybe it's different for you guys in Oklahoma, but here like I'd be putting it in now and I'd be getting it in like late August. And that's like
Yeah.
not a really profitable way to use my space for a filler, right? So yeah, that's kind of
I
like
put
the
ours
conclusion I came
in
to.
probably like remember when I did that like early seeding of things because I direct sow our basil too. So I put ours in a couple of weeks ago, like into our U-pick area, but then like our actual farm, I had just put like I've just been so busy, so I just put it in this week. So it's going to like be a while before I have it, which leads me to a question for you. Mint, like will it go all throughout the summer or like how does this work? How tell me
Yes.
more about mint.
Mountain mint, my favorite. And I'm now rooting apple mint, which I know both of which you're
Yes,
putting in.
that's what I
So
have.
I know a couple of people in this chat have mountain mint, so please let me know if you have differing experiences. I'm like still learning about mint, but I've always been told you want to wait until stuff starts flowering, right? And you want to wait until the stem becomes a little bit like more woody before you cut it, which at that point in here in New Jersey, we're talking about like very, very late June through maybe like mid late July. That's what happens with mint here. But I found that for Mother's Day, I was able, if I cut it early in the eve or early in the morning or late in the evening and was able to keep the mint hydrated, I could still cut my mountain mint and not have it wilt even though it didn't have flowers. So it's a little bit like pathetic looking. You need a lot more stems for it to look filly, and it's not like velvet like in texture yet. So it feels like a very different plant if you cut now. But assuming that you absolutely were like in a desperate need for filler right now, I feel like mountain mint actually has a really long open window of harvest. And then the other piece is that if you cut hard, you can get a second flush, which is not going to be as tall, but you'll still get something out of it. I think they're usually like a little bit shorter, but still completely workable in vases. So I feel like for that reason, like mint is a really great filler, especially mountain mint.
Yeah. I added a raised bed of mountain mint and I added a raised bed of apple mint. And so I actually had my first cuts. And so if anyone in the chat knows, because I had my first cuts on apple mint this week, but I didn't wait for it to flower. I probably should have checked that before I cut on it.
I got I got apple mint for Mother's Day from a grower at my co-op, and it did wonderfully. And I learned, yeah, and for some reason I thought that mint didn't like being in the refrigerator, but completely false. They love being in the refrigerator. I had some like kind of wilty stems, put them in the cooler, and they just perked right back up. So I find that things like quick dip, cooler, like do wonders for things like that just end up wilting. And we've actually got a few things here in the chat going back to lilacs. Definitely good to check with local gardeners that lilacs do acclimate to their area and grow best if local. So that makes a lot of sense. I like the chat about shoot the deer hang up on the fence. She's old school. But yeah, so oh, and then Amy's also growing mountain mint because of my recommendation. Yeah, so it's funny because I feel like that there were growers who were growing mint before and never really talked about it. Maybe I just didn't notice that they didn't talk about it. But yeah, like that's the one perennial that I invested a lot in. I intended to invest a lot, but I had a local grower friend who never was able to put her mint in. So I bought them all off of her, and I think I bought like $300 worth of mountain mint, which is a lot for someone like me who doesn't have a lot of space. But like I'm so glad I did it because I'm already using it. So
you haven't got oregano yet, have you?
no, and I have seed, and I've been meaning to start it, and I never started. And at this point, I'm like, I might as well just buy it. So, like, how does oregano do?
I was gonna look. I think we have to. I don't know. I was starting to look into it last night, so that'll probably.
If anyone grows oregano, please let us know in the chat. Do you love it? What is the bloom window time, right? Because that's also part of the question is like, how long of a harvest period do you have with these? And I find that like the perennials typically for filler have a much longer harvest window.
Yeah, I know that b.a.r.e. at Blossom and Branch does the mountain or the drops of Jupiter oregano is the one that she grows. So I'll probably order plugs of it, and I think that that's the one I'm going to do, but I don't feel like I know enough about it yet to be like, okay, I'm gonna invest in it. But I'm really trying to figure out what fillers, and I don't want them to be like annual seeded fillers, will go with our dahlias every year because I think that in the summertime will be summer and fall will be super dahlia heavy on our farm. Like that's going to be our main focus, our main crop. And so my goal is to have things to go along with that. So that's kind of why we're focused on it.
Yeah. So these are not perennials, but I want to put a plug in for two annuals that are traditionally not thought of as filler. One of them is actually marigold. Marigold, like obviously is very abundant, very easy to direct seed. And Linda from Little Farmhouse Flowers, I think, did a pro post on how they primarily grow marigolds for filler. And that resonated with me because that's actually what I ended up doing last year. I was growing marigold as companion plants for my tomatoes. So I wasn't focusing on them as cut flowers, but I noticed the foliage was amazing, and they like it's literally the same time as dahlias. And then the other one I want to put in a plug for is tomatoes. So like I'm growing tomatoes for like my household and stuff, and the foliage once you start getting to like August, September is like just so abundant. And this year I'm
Hmm.
trialing some variegated type of foliages. So I just think that like I'm also trying to kill two birds with one stone. I want to be able to grow stuff that I can eat. Um, some of the stuff that like has flowering fruit, so in the form of peppers, even small eggplant, tomatoes, obviously fruits too, like they also do really well with florists. So I'm not going to use them in the retail setting, but they actually fetch a really high amount for florists. So like something like a tomato, if you can grow in abundance and you grow like cherry tomatoes, at least for me, for designers, it's a very, very profitable crop. So just something to
You have
consider.
sold me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question. What is, because Jesse knows I'm not like a vegetable grower. I wanted to this year, but still I just didn't have time. What is like a tomato's number one pest?
The
Do you know?
hornworm. The tomato hornworm, it's this like green, um, I think it turns into a moth. I don't know why it's called a worm, but it's basically like a caterpillar type of pest where it will just decimate your tomato. And it's kind of hard to mistake in it because it's like it's green and it's really ugly. But
It's
yeah, like
weird.
it's
Like,
kind of like a
look
cabbage
good.
worm in this in the analogy sense of that's what it is for a tomato. But yeah, like other than that, I would say that like yeah, like there's pests, but I find that it's a lot easier to grow vegetables that are like eggplant and tomatoes, peppers from a pest perspective versus disease. Like I have more issues with disease over pest.
Okay. So we don't think there'd be an issue if I interplanted. This was going to be one of my questions today. I'm thinking about interplanting tomatoes and dahlias
Hmm.
because I just have some space at the end of one of my dahlia rows where I was going to pop in some tomatoes. And I've been thinking about it because it's already going to be under irrigation and I have the open space. So I could either do marigolds or I'll probably do marigolds
I don't think there would be
from
an
a
issue
pest
planting
perspective. Maybe I'll do
tomatoes.
both.
I'm Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else in the chat have an opinion on this? It's not one I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, like go for it, right? And it's also not one I'm like, no, absolutely not. I think like it could work. Like when I think about a tomato root system, like tomato roots can actually go pretty deep. And obviously dahlia tubers are relatively deep, right? But dahlia tubers don't take up like that much space outside of the
Yeah.
vicinity that they're in, right? Like I think
Okay
when
with
I think
that.
about planting dahlias, especially for you in Oklahoma because it's so hot, I'm kind of thinking about like what are some plants that might actually give it cover or shade during the
Mhm.
hottest time of the day, like in the afternoon when it's western facing? And that's
Yeah.
actually what I might companion plant closer to my dahlias. I
Yes. No,
also
that's
think about things that are structurally strong because I am really bad at netting, at corralling. And so, like, I like to plant things like sunflowers next to things that might topple over, right? So that's
yeah.
kind of how I think about interplanting with dahlias.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
there's a
helpful.
lot in the chat right now. So
Let's
Amy, we
see.
did talk about baptisia, and Jordan talked about how she literally got stems from 6 week transplants, which is crazy.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think she was asking about, or she said she learned yesterday that people use Baptisia just for the foliage. And yes,
yes.
that is the really cool part about Baptisia when we talk about like harvest windows. So it has three different stages of harvest. So you can harvest it when it's in bloom, which is what I'm doing right now, or you can harvest it when it goes into seed pod, or you can harvest it just for foliage. What I've heard is the downside, or just what you have to kind of work around, is when you're harvesting it for foliage, it has a tendency to wilt. So it might not wilt in the springtime when you're harvesting it for blooms, but it's one that you'll want to use quick dip with. Or right now in my kitchen, I had a couple that did wilt yesterday. So I'm trying the like boiling water and sticking it in it, and they were starting to perk up. So I'll report back. Hopefully they fully perk up and are good to go. But I'm thinking quick, as long as you had quick dip, you'd probably be fine with that.
Yep, yep. I see the question about new logo. We'll get to that later. If you plant your tomatoes in with basil, the hornworms don't smell them. I plant my basil in before my tomatoes, and I don't have pest pressure. Okay, that's very interesting to know. I mean, that's kind of like the perks of companion planting. I just started putting in my tomatoes, eggplants, and stuff in. So, Yeah,
This brings up a great point that if y'all don't know, Jessie started a Facebook group for
true.
interplanting. If you want to tell them about that, I think it would be great because I
Yeah.
think a lot of us really like that.
Yeah, I think the name of the group is called Interplanting for Flower Farmers. And it's basically just this like, look, a lot of us have very limited space. And a lot of us, even like Jordan, who have a lot of space, we want to maximize that space, right? And I do think that interplanting is ultimately better for plants in general. Like if you think about nature, like nothing is monocropped in a row, right?
Mhm.
Like things work symbiotically together. So there's like no public forum for people to share about all their successes and failures about interplanting. So I started a Facebook group. I will put it in the description below, the link to it. But I'm sure if you search for it on Facebook, interplanting for flower farmers, like it'll pop up because there's nothing else. So I think we're like a
Yeah.
small group of like 50 something people right now, but people are already trying to
So
seek advice in there, which is really good. And I'll be the first to say that like I've had some successes and I'm seeing some failures with intercropping right now. And I think it's like really important for us to share that information so that we don't, make the same mistakes if we don't have to. So, but
Yep.
thank you for that, Jordan. Tomatoes grow like crazy, restricted airflow. Yes, that's usually the number one reason for disease. So that's something that I'm always trying to be mindful of. Like tomatoes are the one things that you do have to state or like make sure you're trellising or whatever it
Mhm.
is, and you can get a lot more stems off of it, especially if you're trying to cut for foliage. So Jordan, have you considered nursery licensing for crop
I do
insurance?
have our nursery license.
Yes. And you do
Yes,
sell like potted
we
plants
do.
and all that stuff. So yeah, so Jordan
Yeah,
has
we
that.
sell potted peonies, dahlia tubers. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't because it is just not something I'm interested in. I sell bulbs which don't come in soil. Typically it's if you are selling something with soil that like that's coming from your property, that's when you need that nursery license. But like you don't have crop insurance, right, Jordan? Like yeah.
No.
It's really hard, I feel, to get flower farm crop insurance, especially at this type of small scale.
There, and I can't tell you all the details, but there's something new that came out related to crop insurance, and all I saw was there was something about sunflowers on it.
Huh.
I don't know. Maybe look into it. I haven't dug into it, but
Yeah.
I happened to scroll past it. It was a new, it's something new this year. So I
Got
don't know.
it. Okay.
But yeah, we don't have crop insurance.
Yep.
Wish we did. Other woodies that we're
Viburnum.
growing. Huh?
Viburnum.
Yes, we have a couple of Viburnum. I haven't been able to get them wholesale. I've struggled to find
Oh,
them. I have
interesting.
finally found a supplier. So on Viburnum, I just have like or six of them. We haven't even planted them yet. They're like six big ones. I've just been honestly Lowe's clearance for those
Hmm.
because I think wholesale they're going to be like $5, but you're going to get a little tiny one, and so they're $25 at Lowe's right now. So if I wait until they clearance them, I can get them for 12. So I've just been like slowly getting those as we've had them, but I'm excited for those once we have them. But those do take a really long time to like get established.
But
So
you can
that's
also cut them for greenery. You don't have to wait for the flowers. And I remember I have a friend who literally made viburnum and sweet William bouquets, and they sold like hotcakes. Like they looked
Ooh,
awesome. Yeah. So
yeah, I
viburnum
see it. Their
foliage is great
foliage
this
is
time of
really
year. Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks super healthy. I have it like sitting right outside my front door, like waiting to be planted. So it's really pretty.
That's
We're
awesome.
also growing nine bark, which
Yes.
you don't necessarily grow for the blooms. Like it does have this like little bloom on it in the springtime, but that falls off real quick. It's cute though, so you could use it for like
We sell
florist
it at the
work.
co-op this time of year. So Nine Bark
Yeah,
has a spring and a fall time of
yeah.
cutting, especially if you're
You
doing
just
design
wouldn't want
work.
to use it retail, I don't think.
You can
Like
do it for
those
retail. The
fall
the
walks
vase life
are
is
super
way too
expensive,
short, especially for those blooms.
way too short.
Yeah. And
But
I
it
also
is
find
really
it hard to use Nine Bark in the fall for retail because typically the stems that you're trying to cut are a lot more woody and thicker and
mhm.
mature. Like you can use it, but it's just like it's not my favorite filler to use in a wrap. But
Yeah.
Nine Bark's a really good one, I think, in terms of investment.
And then we got smoke bush that we
Yes.
added. I'm
Yep.
really excited about that. We probably won't ever actually use it. We'll probably always cut on it and not use it for like the big like smoke bush blooms because it blooms on old wood. So if we're cutting on it every year, we'll not necessarily ever get the blooms. And then we planted snowberry, Symphocarpus.
Yep. Someone else just
Those
said,
are like
Amanda said she put in some snowberry.
Yeah, yeah, good. I'm excited for that. I don't really know how we're gonna use that. I mean, we'll just use it. I don't really see like our florist buying it here, but we'll see how we use that one.
Yep.
We just invested in one row. And then we got ilex, so winterberry holly.
Yes.
So I did a white and a red. So we
Nice.
want to be able to do like Christmas workshops. A lot of the florists in the area do Christmas workshops, wreath making ones. So want to eventually be able to have that to
I,
offer.
I assume this is a dumb question because you're in Oklahoma, but do you guys have like evergreens there? You
Yes, we
do.
do have evergreens. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have so many evergreens, and we have so many evergreens on our property, actually. We're really fortunate. We have these like beautiful, it's like surrounded by a bank of like pine trees. Most of them are our neighbors, but we also have, they planted them in the front because the property used to be theirs. So we have these like beautiful pines. We have all these beautiful evergreen trees here.
Ah, okay,
So
so they do grow in
I will have
Oklahoma.
yeah, and we'll have plenty of evergreens to harvest to do wreath workshops. And we'll have pine cones because we have all the pine trees.
Yes.
So we have all
Yeah.
the things. That was like the only thing I felt like we were missing was like, oh, but we need like the berries.
So,
So,
yeah, so a random fact about where I live. We are like surrounded by a much bigger property that's 30 acres. And
mhm.
the guy what intended to start a Christmas tree farm, but like never did. And so he has a mass amount of pine trees that have just like, or they're not pine trees, but like the evergreen spruces
Mhm.
that have just like overgrown. And so I'm like, this is like wreath heaven here.
Have been you
Yes,
to become friends
exactly.
with him.
Yeah. Yes.
Like
So,
so.
but like we are actually also surrounded by a lot of like pines and spruce. So there's a lot of evergreen here. Again, like it's kind of like not in my interest to do the winter type of stuff. Like wreath making looks awesome, but I also know it's very labor intensive. But yeah, so that's why like I
So
haven't really
we kind
focused much on
of
that.
plan to this is like showing our cards a little. So we plan to make like wreath making like kits that we'll
Mm.
sell in Buttercup. So it's more of like a
Ooh, I
grab
love
and
it.
go option.
I
Yeah.
love it.
So
Yeah,
that's how
that's a good
we
idea.
plan to do it rather. And then I'm sure we'll do because we have the greenhouse space. Like I'm sure we'll do a workshop, but and then we'll also have probably like the greenhouse space set up for like a build your own
Ooh.
outside of the workshop. So I kind of want to do it in like three different options.
Yeah, I think that winter is such a good opportunity if you can do things like wreaths.
Yeah.
Yeah. The that reminded me, I don't know if anyone's growing hypericum. Is that how you say it? St. John
Something like that.
yeah,
I
St.
know what you're
John's
talking
wort.
about.
And I know that those berries are not necessarily for Christmas. I think in some areas they might actually make it up to Thanksgiving. That was actually one that I wanted to invest in, but I, I didn't do enough research to know like when to plant and stuff, so I haven't done that yet. But I'm curious to see if anyone in the chat has done that. But we also have some more in the chat over here. So back on crop insurance, Dirt on Flowers just had an episode on that. So that's good to know because I want to listen to
Oh,
that one.
yes. That,
Yep.
I think that's the one where she talked about she had like the person from the FSA there. I haven't
Ah,
fully
got it.
listened to that
Okay.
yet.
Yes, yes. Along the line of sunflowers, how does everyone feel about sunchokes, Jerusalem artichokes as a cut flower option? I feel like that one's coming into popularity. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, I believe deer eat that, which is why I haven't really looked at that. But like the
Okra.
Jerusalem artichoke and even asparagus, I think are worthy perennials to look at. Like they're kind of funky and unique, but could be cool if people have the space. I don't know if anyone else in here has grown that, and I'd love to hear that. I use 9 bark all the time in the fall. If you scrape your stems and split them, they last in mixed bouquets. Yeah, that's kind of like the recurring theme of using woodies, right? Is
What
that to
is
hydrate them,
what
you want to split them, especially for something like hellebores, which are another crop I think that
know
you
that.
like.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna
because you
add.
also bought some hellebores, right? Or did you?
Haven't bought them yet. I was talking with him and then I don't know. I haven't I was out of town and I need to send him a message. But yeah, no, we're gonna get some hellebores. We actually have like a spot that's like it's under those pine trees. Like it's like our only shaded spot on the property, and it's actually like across the road because we own across the road too. So we're on a private road, and so I'm like, ooh, we're gonna like fill that in to where it's like not really like taking up space on the farm, but
Yeah.
we'll put them over there and let
That's a
them just
great
do their thing.
landscaping plant that's supposedly deer resistant, and that will bloom alongside your daffodils and your tulips. So that's a really
Do
good
you have
perennial. Huh?
do you have Solomon seal?
I do not. It's one that I
I
really should
don't
get.
either.
That's
I
what
want
Danielle
one.
from North Lawn
Oh,
Flower
I
Farm
love
really
it.
relies
It's
on.
so
Yeah.
pretty.
Yes.
Yeah. She's the one that makes me want to buy it. Every time I see her arrangements, I'm like, gotta find a spot for that. So I'm also probably gonna tuck that in the same spot where I put the hellebores.
Yeah, I like, don't you just feel like or at least for me, like I learned finally about all of these annuals, and now there's this like completely different universe of other
I
flowers that I
know.
feel like I'm just starting to dip my toe into. And I just wish it was flipped around that I
I
started
know.
in
I
the
feel like we
perennial piece
always
first.
hear like I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like we always hear like you want to shorten your crop list. You want to shorten your crop list. And I'm like, "Yes." Like I agree. Like I was counting like annuals that we grow in the spring and I think we grow like 16. That like that's what we have planned for next year. And I'm like, I probably agree with like continuing to like shorten your annual crop list, but like on your perennials, I'm like, I don't know.
Yes,
Like I don't even count them. Like
that's a really good point. I like that. It's how do you like, I mean it's minimum input, maximum output, right? Like, so you
yeah.
really should be increasing the stuff that's gonna be one time labor, maintenance, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, and then decreasing the stuff that's gonna take you like repetitive
Mhm.
time
For
over and over.
years.
And I'm starting to go into this piece where like I talk a lot about Linda from Little Farmhouse Flowers, but she was the first person who put into my brain the power of bulbs and like bulb flowering crops because they're so programmable. And it's not just like tulips and lilies, like gladiolus, calla lilies, which I'm trialing this year. But it's just like it's one of those things where I think I might get to a point where bulbs become like my focals, and then I really invest in perennials that fill everything else around it, because that just feels a lot more manageable for me. And I also find that like bulbs are not obviously resilient against disease and pest, but like I feel like I have a much easier time with them, knock on wood, than the other annuals that I grow.
I think so too, though. I agree with it completely. I just think it's a easier way to shift is like cut down your annuals, increase your perennials. Like
Yep,
it's a good like plan, especially from a labor perspective.
absolutely. Couple of minutes left, but the chat is on fire right now. Um, cicada tornadoes, called cicada nados. Someone wrote they have American My American cranberry is a great foliage, beautiful spring white flowers, and interest berries that last in winter. Thought for something
Mm,
not mainstream. See, that's an interesting one to look into because now you've hit two very important points in the year that are typically hard to hit. So that's called My American
mhm.
Cranberry. We live on my husband's family Christmas tree farm. That's a nice one to be able to offer in the winter wreaths. Amanda says she put a handful of Hypernicum berries in to see if they would overwinter, and they came back. So we'll see. Man, I'm very curious to see what you do because you're in a very similar zone as me. Linda from Little Farmhouse Flowers does, I believe, overwinter her in like high tunnels, and they are able to have a very long bloom time window for them. So actually, that might be something for you, Jordan, because I think that you're in a
Mhm.
zone where Hypernicum berries will just naturally perennialize, and you might actually be able to get an extended harvest period and get the berries too, like for
Oh
Christmas.
yeah,
It might work for you for
yeah.
Christmas because of how hot you
Okay,
guys
I'll have
are.
to look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Northlawn was on Conan. I heard about that. I didn't see it yet, and I heard it was really, really good. So that's on my list.
she
And
was
then
on what?
on Conan O'Brien. Yeah.
What? Really?
Yeah.
That's
I
crazy.
saw it in her community post, but I never got a chance to look it up and see it because there's no link. But I heard it was really good. So people
Oh,
should
I'm
check that out if you're a
excited.
Danielle fan. I like how it's stated to choose your perennial fillers based upon how they pair with your main focals for that season. I feel like this focus will help me rein in my love for perennials. The garden life, I feel like we need to talk about all the perennials that you love, and then we can talk together about then, how they coincide with each other because I feel like Jordan knows a lot more about perennials because she took that course and her like experience with gardening as a whole. But I'm still in this phase of like, I don't know what I don't know. And there's just like
Mhm.
all of these varieties out there that are still new to me. So I would love to know like what your favorites are. And then maybe like throughout the season, we can start talking about like what pairs well throughout the season. And of course, that's going to be different for everyone. But Jordan, it's like 11 right now. Is there anything that was like on our long list that we didn't cover?
I know we had such a long list. I'm like, do we want to just run through? I just think it might be helpful for
Yeah.
everyone if we just like run through like what perennials, like I
Yes,
know we
yes,
talked
yes.
what it is. Do you want to run
Yes.
through like what perennials we're growing?
Yes.
Okay.
You go first.
So just to kind of run through it. So lilies, baptisia, mountain mint. I'm adding phlox. I've never grown phlox before, so that'll be my first time. Caryopteris, highly recommend that. Buy some
I
at
didn't
once.
know
It
that
grows
was a perennial.
extremely
Good to
fast.
know.
Yeah, they get massive. I planted these like little tiny ones and they get like 5 feet. They're big. Um, I don't grow gooseneck loosestrife, but it's currently in my cart. So
Okay.
soon I'm gonna put it in a raised bed. And then I grew sedum in my garden and I loved it. We don't have it on the farm yet. Um, let's see, yarrow, we love, have a 60-foot row of it. A couple of things on yarrow, just I love like that summer pastels mix. Is that what you're growing too?
I'm growing the summer berries.
Summer berries. Okay. I think
Yes.
I do summer pastels that you get from Geo.
Okay.
And then
But just
I
remember on the topic of yarrow, like yarrow is something that I've been reading a lot about because like Lisa Mason Ziegler says that she replants them like basically every year. And what ends up happening is yarrow will like self seed, but apparently certain colors have like a dominant trait and they're usually colors that we don't necessarily want. I think it's actually like white that ends up being the more
mhm.
dominant colors. So you can't necessarily rely on them as like a true perennial. You have to kind of like replenish every couple of years. So I think I'm gonna do like a 2 year cycle.
Are you okay?
Well, I've
I'm
also like last year I divided my yarrow. So I put in like another half row of yarrow, which is like a lot for me in terms of how much yarrow I have. So I'm curious to see if that's enough because I'd rather not start from seed. I'd rather just like
yeah.
divide. They're already a lot further along and see if I still get the vibrancy of that color.
Yeah. Even if we had to start from seed, I was working on my spring order. It's like 20 bucks for 1,000
I
seeds.
know
I'm
it's
like,
just
it's the one
it's
that I feel like
it's just needing
it's
to
the one
start
I
it.
feel worth it to start it
Yeah.
because it's just so good.
Yes.
Oh, but we also grew Love Parade this year, which I do like. It's just shorter
Okay.
than like the summer berries or summer pastels. And then we grew the Pearl, and I wanted to
Yes.
love it, and I'm not loving it.
Oh, that's not
So
good because I have
I'll
some of
follow up
that.
with you. No, I hope you love it. I don't know. It's just I don't. I feel like you know how on yarrow it has to like all be bloomed out and stiff
Yeah.
before. I
Yeah.
feel like parts of it are like starting to go to seed before all of them are bloomed
Oh,
out.
interesting.
It's
Okay.
it's not working for me. So, which is frustrating because I have like
A
a
lot.
20-foot section of it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I really wish I had more summer pastels.
Okay.
And then we have Rudbeckia, we have Echinacea. I really like the doubles on the Echinacea. We're going some singles, but my issue with the singles is it gets like petal damage, so then I just end up using them for like the seed pod texture versus the actually as a flower. But I like on the doubles, you can still make it work. And also what I found on the doubles is that they had better vase life than the
Mm.
singles.
Okay.
So
Good to know.
just keep that in mind. That was my experience. Not saying that would be true for everyone, but that was my experience. We grow Sweet William, which I was treating as an annual, though this year I'm going to try to treat it as a perennial after Jesse and I talked about it last week. And then I'm growing Feverfew, but it's getting
Excuse
cut
me.
from my list. I'm done growing it. I just
Uh,
don't love it.
my
It
last
never does
season,
that well.
yeah, my last season of Feverfield, we'll see how it does because mine were filled with thrips last year, and I'm already seeing the ladybugs on there, which means that there's aphids. So that might just get cut because of crop issues,
We
or
just
sorry,
had a
like pest
lot of
issues.
loss.
Yeah.
It didn't overwinter well for us.
Oh,
Like I
that's
had
interesting.
a 60 by 4 foot row of it, and I probably have like 10 plants, and I'm like, well, I'm not messing. I would rather have yarrow. I'm not messing with that again.
Yeah,
So,
and I find that yarrow is just a lot more reliable and they like bloom at the same time. So at that point it's like why not, right?
why?
Um
Yeah.
so I have so I got about $700 worth of perennials in that was shipped to me last week and half of them are in. So I got a lot of Agistache. I got a summer allium. I forgot the name already. Summer bear summer something. Summer.
Summer's in the name.
Yeah, summer's
I
in
don't
the
remember
name. Yes. I got 2 trays of double echinacea. So I got like the raspberry and marmalade one. I'm really excited for those. I hope those do well. And I got Veronica, which unfortunately I was in a rush and I got a shorter flowering Veronica. And it's supposed to be like 6 to 10 inches, which, sounds really short. But one of the things that I've really noticed with florists is that not everyone is looking for like a 1 to 3 foot tall stem, right? Like sometimes they're
Oh,
doing really small things. They're doing like boutonnieres or doing like whatever it is, a bud vase, right? Like people actually want the option to have something smaller. So obviously it will be priced accordingly to that. But there's a market for it, and not everyone grows short stuff for florists. So just something to think about if you're doing wholesale. And I think that was, oh, and then
we
Stairway
know
to Heaven. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
when is Veronica supposed to bloom? Do we
I think
know?
sometime like in the summer, I want to say. I think. Don't
I
quote me
have
on
it on
that.
my plan, but now I like the Baptisia so much that I'm thinking about axing the Veronica and replacing
I
it
would actually
with another
probably
row.
I would probably grow Baptisia because Veronica doesn't give you that wow factor. Like I'm growing Veronica more for my florists, right? Like
Yeah,
like the stuff that I'm growing here, it's less like it takes up space, but like things like Stash will spread out over time and give me a lot of cuts. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is like how do I get enough cuts to make like a 10 stem bunch out of the thing that I'm putting in, right? So I'm kind of
have you looked
prioritizing
at
things like that.
have you looked at gooseneck loosestrife?
Not yet. Not
You should
yet.
look at it in comparison to Veronica because
Okay.
to me they're like a similar stem. It's white,
Yep.
and it's like super invasive. It's
Good
like
and
a
bad.
strong spreader, which we love to
Good and
see.
bad,
So I'm
right?
just you
Yeah.
should look at it in comparison to see
Yep.
what you think.
Yep.
And they have it in plugs in a 32 style tray because I was looking at it last night.
Okay. Okay. And then I went off the deep end and got Polonium Stairway to Heaven. It's
Oh,
yes. So that one is kind of that one's definitely like a trial. I got 32 of them. They're actually pretty expensive, but they're supposed to
hmm.
be pretty hardy for where I am, and I'm hoping to use them as filler. So for both me and also for the co-op. So yeah, those are all the ones that I have, and that's definitely like round one. I'll probably have at least one more round for this year to try to hit spring for next year. Because I tried to order Baptisia and it got back ordered and nixed from my order. And that was the one I was most excited about, especially after Jordan was talking about her Baptisia. So I'm definitely going to make sure I have enough to plant for the fall to overwinter for the spring.
Yeah,
But yeah,
you'll.
I'd say there's a bunch more stuff in the chat. So someone is growing Hypericum, got them from Farmer Bailey's last year's batch over winter. So she's going to put in more. So that's good.
Mm.
Margie, yeah, Danielle was on Conan O'Brien's podcast, so I guess Google those
Oh,
terms and you might be able to find it. And then Amanda, I'll split a perennial tray with you, meet you halfway. I mean, like I think that there's a lot of opportunity for growers to meet up. Like I feel like I know a bunch of people in Pennsylvania who probably live closer to you, Amanda, that might actually be able to do something like that. But I would definitely look at Ball. Like I know a lot of us go to Farmer Bailey's because like let's face it, like he gives us an Amazon like ordering platform. But part of the problem is that he has so much demand, he doesn't have enough supply, and he obviously doesn't carry everything. So if you look at WebTrack and the ability to order in 32 trays, like I think that that's actually a really big benefit. And the other thing that I want to talk about is like very quickly is that Farmer Bailey's is really, really good, I think, for like the smaller scale grower, for someone like my size. But Jordan, for you, like I feel like you've outgrown Farmer Bailey's, right?
I did order some of our Woodies from him
Mhm.
because I think that he has like there's not as many like Woodies that you can order. You just can't order all the Woodies through Ball. Like not all of those suppliers are on there. So um I did order that. I think that Farmer Bailey has such a good company that he has such high demand that it makes it a little more difficult to get like what you want. And so I just want to be able to place my order. Like my orders for spring are done. All of my plug orders for spring 2025. All of my plug orders are done. And so like I think his doesn't open until like July or August. Like I just wouldn't want to wait that long. I like to be able to get on Ball and just get my orders placed from all of my suppliers that I purchase from.
Yeah,
And
and
we've had a really great experience with Ball. And like, just a reminder, guys, like, Ball is a broker. They're not who you're buying from. You're buying from individual suppliers. And so you may have a bad experience with like one bulb supplier on there, and we
we
can't
all
all
know who
just
that
like
is.
write off
We won't name it,
We
but
can't all just write off that like, oh, ball's terrible because of that. No, ball's amazing. And if y'all have questions on how to order, I know how to order on there. So Jesse, maybe we do like a Patreon video on like, here's how to order from Ball, and I will walk you guys through it because I promise I'm a pro. Like my rep like gives me a hard time because like I'm a pro. I know how to order on there. I know how to navigate. I know how to tell you all the ins and outs. I know how to filter down to just cut flour.
yeah,
So you
but
get
like,
really good
so
at it, or
yeah, and
you
on
just
that note, right, like Grow and Sell is who Farmer Bailey uses
on
as a
Ball.
supplier, right? And Grow and Sell is also on Ball. So Farmer Bailey's might be out of something, but Grow and Sell may not be through Ball, right? So in other words,
Yeah.
like I ordered my perennials about 4.5 weeks out from when I got them, and I would never have been able to do that through Farmer Bailey's because of the amount of demand that he has, and he's only working through Grow and Sell. So if you're finding a hard time finding stuff from Farmer Bailey's, like I do order from Farmer Bailey's. I just want to say like excellent customer
Yes.
service,
He's
excellent
great. Yeah.
everything. Just obviously, he has more demand than supply, right? So just want to put that out there.
Which is great for him. Yeah,
Yeah.
we love that for him. But there's other options of who to order from, and they're all also on Ball if you need to go directly to them. We more order mostly from, I think it's like Ball Tagua, something like that. I don't know.
There's so
I
many on
think
there, so yeah.
E2G is their that's who we get all of like our annual plugs from, and then Greenleaf is who we use for all of our perennial plugs.
Awesome.
We've
Yeah.
been very happy with them.
So, but thanks guys for sticking with us. We're 12 minutes past the hour. Jordon has an exciting graduation party to attend. I've got family coming over. We really appreciate you spending our Sunday with us. And yeah, like stay tuned for the next live because Jordan and I have like a laundry list of things that we want to talk about. We might put a poll out there in terms of what you guys want us to talk about. But yeah, thanks for joining and have a